Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Monday through Sunday podcast. Today, you have myself, Logan, here, and we are sitting down for a very special episode, a brand new format we've never done here on the show, which is a Q&A. I know, super groundbreaking, right? A Q&A episode on a podcast, but it is our first time doing it on this show. Today's questions came straight from you guys. We polled on our Instagram. You guys told us what you wanted to hear, but we were really pleased to see there was a bit of a common theme, a common thread. It seems like we're all out there hustling and grinding, trying to build the career and relationships of our dreams, but we're stumbling into a lot of the similar problems. We are trying to manage work stress. We're trying to carve out our daily routines and ritualize our habits. We're trying to answer these big picture work and business questions and make sure that we don't girl boss too hard that we burn out along the way. So we're going to touch on all of these things, along with some specifics about us. Who is Monday through Sunday? Who is Blossom Brands? Who are these people that have been talking into your headphones lately? So we'll finish up with some personal experiences and lighter topics and advice. So in case you're like, whoa, Logan, what are you talking about? Where did these questions come from? Well, in case you missed it, there are now 2 ways that you can submit your questions to be featured on the show. The first is what you already know and love, which you can send us an email or DM at any time. We love to hear from you and always appreciate that little bit of happy mail coming in our inbox. But what we heard from you and what we wanted to provide as an option as well is a way to submit anonymous questions. We know that you guys have juicy burning secrets, and sometimes there are questions you want to ask that are NSFW or not suitable for work, but you still want to get the answer. So that is now there for you at the link in our bio and Instagram. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of our link, you will find an anonymous question box where you can leave us all of your dirty little secrets. The second new option is you can now leave us a voicemail. So in that same spot in the link in our bio, you can scroll to the bottom again and you will see an option to leave us a voicemail, which really brings me back to like my home phone in the 90s, like leaving people voicemails. Like how funny is it before cell phones that like if you missed a call, you truly didn't know what somebody wanted from you until you got back home. I still have like all of my friends' home phone numbers memorized, yet I cannot remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Anyway, so we're throwing it back with a voicemail feature that is there for you as well. And this option will not be anonymous. You can leave out your name if you'd like, but your voice will be played on the show as we play your message, answer your question, and it'll be a fun little way for us to chit chat in basically real time in a episode of the show. So that's all my housekeeping for you guys. Leave us all of your juicy questions, feedback, compliments. We want it all. We can't wait to hear from you. Welcome to Monday through Sunday. I'm Logan.
I'm Sanam.
And I'm Lane. We're best friends, the founders of Blossom Brands, and the hosts of this podcast.
We can't wait to take you behind the scenes of running a 7-figure agency with our best friends.
We're sharing our mistakes, our lessons learned, and giving you tactical advice to build the career, the business, and the relationships you dream of, and a life you don't need a weekend to escape from.
So let's get balanced and let's get down to business. Welcome to the show.
So before we dive into the questions, I wanted to do a little chit chat with you guys and do some life updates. So I figured we could do a quick personal best and professional best. So my personal best lately is that I have seriously been on turbo mode, which I'm totally stealing Sanam's phrase, but there's just no other way to put it. I have just been crushing it in all of the aspects of my personal life lately. Like I spent an entire Saturday deep cleaning my house from top to bottom. I have been getting all of my just ducks in a row. And it really is just feeling good. I feel like I have such positive momentum. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that I just entered my follicular phase. So I have all of this energy and I'm really looking forward to like 2 solid more weeks of just like go-getter energy to get all of these things done. But it got me to thinking like, why don't I do this all the time? And it reminded me, do you know that scene from The Holiday, which by the way, like best movie ever, but do you know that scene when Kate Winslet's character Iris is talking to Arthur, who's this like old guy, Hollywood movie producer who she befriends while she is on vacation. I feel like this recap is unnecessary because I feel like if you're listening to this show, you've probably seen this movie like 5,000 times like I have, but just to set the stage. So anyway, they're talking about life and he explains to her, he goes, look, Iris, like in movies, we have the leading lady and the best friend. They both have roles to play, but 2 very separate characters. And you, I can tell, are a leading lady, but for some reason you're behaving like the best friend. And that hits me hard and it hit her hard. And I love how she responds. She goes, I mean, of course, like you're supposed to be the leading lady of your life for Christ's sake. And I don't normally take the Lord's name in vain personally, but just to get the quote right. But anyway, I just love that quote because it really hits home with me. I feel like there are a lot of times in my life where I totally am the leading lady, but then sometimes I can behave like the best friend and I can basically not take my personal life as seriously as I take our business and like my career. And so I can let things fall to the wayside, like unopened mail sitting on the counter or the meal prep, the fresh fruits and veggies I just bought that I need to like actually cut up and wash and like have ready to eat, just like taking care of all those little things to set yourself up for success. I really have been back on my grind with it lately and it feels so, so good. So I guess the takeaway from this is anybody out there, if you feel like you are behaving like the best friend in your own life, I would say be more than the leading lady. I would say be the CEO of your own life. Like run your life the way that you would run a business. And I promise you that that investment in your time and energy will come back to you tenfold in the amount of just peace and serenity and tranquility that you feel when you are not on the clock and you're enjoying your personal time. You can't fully enjoy your personal time if you have all these to-dos stacked up. So that's my mini rant, personal best, turbo mode, leading lady. Moving on to my professional best is kind of a little bit of a contrast. I would say, frankly, that my professional world has been a bit of a doozy lately. Honestly, we've been going through some growing pains in our business. And if you're an entrepreneur, you definitely understand this, but this applies to anybody. I feel like sometimes in your career, you just feel like you are on top of the world. You are absolutely crushing it. Like everything is going right. You are just on this clear upward path. But I feel like after a while of that, sometimes life just knocks you back down a notch. And frankly, that's where I'm at right now. When those times come up, I think a lot of times you just have to grit your teeth and bear it. I think, seasons come and they go, and sometimes like the tides just turn and it's a harder time. And I think what differentiates people who are successful professionally versus those who are not is their ability to grin and bear it and their ability to bounce back and seize opportunities as they come their way after they get through that hard time. So, to tie all that in a bow, I think my professional best lately has been my ability to grin and bear it. I'm really actually proud of myself for the way that I have handled some setbacks, and I just know that more is to come for me. I, am a person of faith. And so I truly believe that like God has a plan for my life that is just immeasurably more than I could ever ask or imagine. And so if things aren't turning out in my life the way I expect, the way I read and the way I justify that is, okay, there's a way bigger plan that I can't even comprehend that's in the works right now. I just have to be patient and let it ride out. So regardless of what you believe, I think the majority of people can agree that like everything happens for a reason. So whatever you attribute that reason to in your life, whether it's Mercury in retrograde or what, I think if you can rest in that and know that there's a greater purpose, it's easier to grin and bear it. And thankfully, I would say just as of this week, after like honestly, like a few weeks of feeling this way, things are finally starting to come into focus and I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel that's like giving purpose behind this season that I've been going through. Okay, whew. After all that heavy stuff, let's get into some fun questions, shall we? And I am actually LOLing at how perfect this first question ties into what I was just saying. And that is, how do you compartmentalize work stress so it doesn't affect your entire week/life? Which, oh my gosh, is that not what we were just talking about? But I will say for me personally, I relate to this question so hard. I would say, particularly in my early 20s, when my entire identity was wrapped up in my first job and my career and what I did for a living. This really was something I struggled with because if something went wrong in work, it felt like I had nothing left going for me in life. I woke up, I went to work, I came home, I worked late, I went to bed, I repeated it all over. I didn't exercise, I didn't take care of my body, I didn't make new friends. If I was hanging out and socializing, I was going out and drinking on the weekends, which is just the opposite of nourishing. And I would say that the way I was able to break out of it was taking a real 180 and doing the exact opposite. I would say right now, and it's funny because I love what I do for work more than I ever have in my life. I feel more inspired and more passionate and like lit on fire about the work that I do, this podcast, so many things. But on the flip side, I haven't made that my entire identity, which I think can be a really hard thing to do, especially as an entrepreneur when you know that your income is so tied to your output and your identity and your public perception can be tied to, oh, I'm the founder of this or I'm the entrepreneur of that. And I think maintaining that separation and having your identity rooted in something that is more constant and is more stable and is more transcendent than a relationship or a job or a amount of money that you're bringing home every month. So for example, like my identity is truly, simply put, rooted in my faith. It's rooted in my identity as a child of God. And I have really leaned into that more in the past couple years than I ever have. And I've felt so much comfort and peace in like realizing that. And everything else just kind of becomes superfluous. So I would say if this is something you're struggling with, I would evaluate what your identity is rooted in and how can you make sure that, first of all, is your identity rooted in the correct place? Is it rooted in something that's in your control? Is it rooted in something that fills your soul? And if the answer is no, and your identity is maybe rooted in a boyfriend or it's rooted in a job, how can you extract that activity and that thing that you probably have to do, right? You probably have to go to work, but work doesn't have to be your identity. So I would suggest really diversifying your interests and diversifying how you're spending your time every day to kind of explore and figure out what could your identity be. Like, could your identity be being really into your fitness, being really into your health, being really into your spiritual growth, being really into learning and being like a perpetual student? Like, there are so many things I think that are more valuable to find your identity in than something that could be lost at the drop of a hat. Like, you could get fired, someone could break up with you. Like, those are just things that I wouldn't suggest putting your full identity in. Yes, when you're in like a serious relationship, for example, you want to give that person all of you, but you also want to be strong in who you are before you share that with somebody else, whether that be a relationship, a job, etc. Okay. I hope I answered that. That was a little long-winded, but let's move on. So the next question is, what is your habit or routine advice for when you can't set your schedule from 8 to 5? So with this question, I'm assuming this listener basically means that they have odd hours. I'm imagining like a nurse or like somebody who works nights, or basically somebody who like can't have the same routine every single day, which I think this is a great question because this is something that I personally have really done a lot of testing with. I think I'm somebody who's, as you guys probably know at this point, really habit oriented, really routine oriented. But I've also fallen into the trap of thinking that if I don't do the exact same thing every single day, every single time, I am failing. And I really had to let go of that because ultimately, when push comes to shove, I was failing, quote unquote, in some aspect of every day. And it turned from a self-improvement thing to like a self-deprecating thing. And so for me, I would say if you have obligations, whether you're a stay-home mom, maybe you're on a new baby schedule, like if you have any sort of obligations, whether it's work, personal, or otherwise, that doesn't allow you quite as much control over like your operating hours in a given day, I have a few pieces of advice. So first, this should be no surprise to you guys, but start your morning early. I would say, and this doesn't include everybody, but odds are you probably have a schedule that maybe you don't have anything going on from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. If that's the case, I think that's the best time to invest in yourself, to invest in your passions, to invest in finding that identity that we were just talking about. So my best advice would be to start your mornings early between 5 and 6 a.m. and maximizing that time before you have to get ready for work or before you have to wake your kids up or before just like life starts to demand things of you. Use that time for you and cherish it. Keep that time sacred. Don't snooze your alarm because when you do that, you're only cheating yourself out of the opportunity to better yourself. Another piece of advice I would have is to ditch that all in or all out mentality. Like I said, if you do snooze your alarm, don't count that as an L for the day and like go to the freezer and have ice cream for breakfast. Like, focus on doing the next thing right. And that will help you stack up more wins than losses. And you will focus more on the outcome of living a balanced life than getting it all right every single time. And then my last piece of advice for this question, I would say, is just do what you can with the time you have, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We all have time that we can carve out of our schedules. We can get off Instagram stories, oh my gosh, and my new rule is like, if I'm not creating content on Instagram, if I'm not managing our socials, I'm not scrolling. I'm not consuming other people's content. That is like my rule, like starting yesterday, that I'm really going to try to stick to. So I would say do what you can to carve out the time that you have. Like if you want to get a workout in and you don't have an hour, 5 minutes truly can make the world of a difference, not just for gradually over time your physique and your strength, but it can also make such a difference for your mental health and well-being. And again, just stacking up wins. That's what we're trying to do here in any phase of life, I would say. So yeah, that's my advice. Last question on this topic is, what's your ideal morning routine? Which this one I have already answered for you. You can go back and listen to episode 21, which is all about how to craft your dream morning routine. I go into super nitty gritty detail of my like psychotic 6 a.m. morning routine and how it really fuels me for a productive day, mentally, physically, spiritually. So definitely go check that one out if you are interested in that topic. Moving on to some work and business related questions. First one is, do y'all do each other's performance reviews? What's the toughest feedback you've received? So this is referencing, I assume, Lane, Sanam, and I, and as partners in our business, how do we give each other feedback and make sure that we are constantly learning and improving without stepping on each other's toes or having like weird power dynamics? So to answer your question, like, do we give each other performance reviews? The answer is no, we don't. We personally prioritize giving each other feedback in real time so that we're always really open and transparent and nothing like stacks up and becomes an issue. I will just like really applaud Lane and Sanam on this. I think the three of us has really cultivated this culture amongst ourselves of being really super open and honest and really immediate in saying the things that we need to say. And I think that is so important for anybody that you're going to go into business with. The worst thing you can do if you have a problem is letting it fester. There's nothing good that can come of that. And if you just say what you have to say respectfully, politely, using your 2 ears and 1 mouth for their intended purposes, which means to listen more than you talk, you will be able to solve so many problems before they even start. So I can give you a great example. Like sometimes when we're on client calls, if I get on a tangent, I can start to throw in some ums here and there. And I think this is a skill I've gotten a little bit better with doing the podcast now. But there was a point in time where I just used not even out of like doubt or like a lack of confidence. It was literally just an involuntary filler word. And so first of all, if you've noticed me say ums on the podcast, like please tell me if this is still an issue for me. But I think I have made some strides in this area. But anyway, instead of letting me go through a whole 30-minute client call saying every other word, Sanam would just like side slack me and be like, hey, watch the ums. And the first time she did that, I was so grateful to her for telling me that feedback, because as someone who doesn't have a direct manager, sometimes there are things that need to be said, right? We all want to learn, we all want to grow, and nobody likes that person that's saying like and yeah every 5 seconds on a conference call. Like that's just not professional, right? So that was really a great moment for me to have self-awareness of something I had no clue I was even doing. And it was a great move on Sanam's part because she was helping us improve as a business the way that we came across to our clients by just making that small tweak. So real-time feedback I think is so huge. And I think this applies regardless. I remember being at my first job, like the lowest man on the totem pole. I would have all of these like concerns. Like I had challenging relationships with my bosses and things. And I would have problem after problem pop up, let's say one a day for a whole week. And they were really small problems. But by the time the end of the week, all of those problems added up, I like would burst into tears and explode and like have this big conversation with my boss that really could have been several small conversations had I just spoken up sooner, respectfully and tactfully. So that would be my advice to truly anybody in a professional setting. Do not let things boil up. That's when emotion comes into play. And I do think that there is an element of emotion that's important to being successful in business. You have to care, you have to be determined, you have to be passionate. But when emotion can get the best of you is when that emotion is left unchecked and it's left unheard and you start to feel not heard and not seen. So I think giving feedback in real time to whoever you work with, if it's a manager, a partner, a direct report, is so, so crucial. And I would encourage you to start implementing that if it's something you've never tried. Let me know how it goes. And then the second part of this question was, what's the toughest feedback that you've received? And I kind of touched on this, but I did have a manager once tell me that I cared way too much about my job and I would never be successful if I was unwilling or unable to separate my emotion from the business. I was told I was an employee paid to do a job, nothing more, nothing less. And ouch, that really, really stung. I am not going to comment on like what I think. Yeah, I am. Actually, I am going to comment on it. I think now, as somebody who's managed multiple employees, runs a business, that's not the kind of thing I would ever say to an employee of mine because I genuinely feel as though my employees and partners and team members, it's more than a job. Like they are more than just a person to this company. So I think this job should be more than just a job to them. They should really care about it. And I am never going to apologize just as a human being. It just goes so against my values and just like who I fundamentally am as a person. Like I'm a passionate, fiery person and I'm not going to apologize for that. I have a fiery personality. If I am about something, I am all about it. If I'm out, I'm all out. Like there's just no in between with me really. And I think it's actually one of my strengths. So in that moment, to be told that that was something that was going to keep me from being successful was really a gut punch and it's something I'll never forget. But I think after years of experience later, I think that was definitely untrue. And clearly I have proved that wrong because now our business is completely rooted in the fact that we have passion for what we're doing. And I think it's so important that no matter what you do, if you're an accountant, you may not get super jazzed over balance sheets, but if you have a passion for helping people, a passion for helping people save money on their taxes, that's enough. So I would just say if you are in a situation where you've ever been told something like that, I would just encourage you to follow your passion. Okay, quick pause for a matcha break.
All right, ladies, let's get real here. Do you want your man to age like fine wine, getting hotter and hotter with each passing year? I mean, who wouldn't, right? Well, listen up because I've got something that's going to help you make that happen. Meet Atwater, the ultimate game changer in men's skincare. Developed by the former president of Kiehl's, this new men's grooming brand brings innovation to the forefront with intuitive products that are deceptively simple, meaning he'll actually want to use them. And let me tell you, I can attest to this firsthand. I gifted my boyfriend Andrew one of Atwater's starter sets last year, thinking he would never use it, but hoping for the best. And I was literally shook to my core when I noticed him starting to use the Heavy Armor facial moisturizer every day, even packing it in his carry-on for our trip to Cabo. I was seriously so freaking proud. Now, let's talk about the eye armor, because if fine lines and wrinkles are becoming a concern around his eyes, this is the solution. Atwater's eye armor is a powerhouse firming cream designed for all skin types. This transformative eye cream targets multiple concerns, revitalizing the delicate eye area with its unique texture. Watch as it diminishes fine lines, depuffs, tightens, brightens, and banishes dark circles, leaving him with a refreshed and youthful appearance. Ready to upgrade his skincare routine? Head to Atwater Skin now and use code MONDAY for an exclusive 20% off your purchase. Don't miss out on the opportunity to treat your man to the gift of radiant, healthy skin with Atwater.
Next question is, how do you select your team when choosing candidates? So this is kind of referring to the hiring process. We do have several full-time employees on our staff, and they are all just the loveliest gals. And we're so grateful to work with the wonderful, strong, smart women that we do at Blossom Brands. And I would say in terms of hiring, how we choose candidates is based on a few things. And I think Lane and Sanam may give it different answers, but these are just the adjectives that came to mind for me. I think first and foremost, personality. When you work with somebody, you spend a lot of time with them. So you need to just like have a baseline, like enjoyment of each other's presence. I think after that for me comes enthusiasm and eagerness. I think you have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to want to learn and grow. And that doesn't mean do it at all costs. We're not working anybody to death over here. That's the opposite of what we stand for. But at the end of the day, you do have to have a bit of drive and determination. And if you want to like sit and send emails back and forth, like that's just not this job. I feel like a lot of people say like, oh, we work hard, play hard. And to me, that's code for like overworked, underpaid, like sleazy businesses that have like Christmas parties where people get drunk at. Like that's so not us. I would never say work hard, play hard, but I would say that we genuinely prioritize growth in our employees, both personally and professionally. it's the theme of this show, that didn't happen for no reason. Like, it truly is what we embody as a business, as Blossom Brands. And then I would say the last thing is just basic professionalism. It really shocks me sometimes when you interview a candidate and like they don't send a follow-up email or like a thank you email. Like, I just think there are some things that may feel a little bit old school, but are still necessary to like play the game in the corporate world. So like, if I love a candidate and they don't send a thank you email, I'm not going to not hire them because of it, but I'm definitely going to think about it. And I'm definitely going to question, okay, are they really interested in this job? Because I think if somebody was really interested, they would send a thank you email. Like, did they just forget? That means they're forgetful. Like, it just kind of goes into this rabbit hole. So I think a basic understanding of like their level of professionalism is really important. Follow-ups are huge. Thank yous are huge. And I think just general preparedness for the interview. If I ask you at the end of the interview, if you have any questions and you say no, like, that's probably the wrong answer. Like, if you want this job, you should probably have questions, right? You're considering taking a leap in your career and joining us. So I would think you would have a question or two. So if you don't have a question, if you don't send a thank you note, those are things I'm just going to take into consideration. Maybe wouldn't be a deal breaker, would definitely make me take pause and reevaluate the candidate. Okay, next question, kind of similar. What are some common factors that all of your employees share? I would say that every single one of our employees are just lovely gals who I genuinely enjoy spending time with. And I think that they are smart. I think they're hardworking. I think they bring a lot to the table. And again, just like mutual respect and enjoyment of one another. I think that is so, so huge with everybody that you work with. How many employees do you have and how did you hire them? So we currently have 8 employees. It's a mix of full-time and part-time. I would say mostly full-time, but we do have some part-time employees that help with the production of this podcast specifically. Hello, Eleanor and Tamara. We love y'all. But anyway, how we hired them, I would say we really started on Upwork. This was something that Lane and Snom pioneered back in the early days of Blossom. They got on Upwork, found some great candidates, and honestly, from there, it blossomed, for the lack of a better word. Like, friends started referring their friends. We hired somebody that ended up going to college with somebody else. Like, it really has just like grown organically from there. And it's really fun because a lot of our employees live in the same city. So they, even though we work virtually, I think they're planning a meetup soon, which is really cute. And I'm really jealous that I can't go. So it just like really makes me happy that not only do I get to work with my best friends and we've kind of established that culture amongst Lane and Sanam and I, that we can also carry that down to the people that we work with. And they're able to have that same like happy, feel good vibes amongst their friends that they work with and collaborate with every day. Okay, last question on the business topic, and that is, what does your typical work week look like? So this is something, again, I'm all about trial and error. I'm all about routines. So I've tried a lot of different things. So I'm going to tell you my typical work week right now. So Mondays, this is one thing that has always been the case. Mondays are like our internal meeting days. So we'll have like our morning all hands meeting with the whole team. We'll kind of touch base on to-dos. And then from a personal perspective, I like to do admin work on Mondays. So like if I need to clear my inbox to zero, if I need to follow up on like a doctor's appointment, even personal things, like I just admin type of like heads down. I don't need to talk to anybody. I don't need to think that hard, just kind of busy work. I like to do that on Monday. Then Tuesday and Thursday, I try to reserve for deep work. So this is similar in that I'm trying to not really talk to anybody, but different in the fact that I'm using my brain to like its fullest potential on these days. Like Tuesday, Thursday, I am planning podcast episodes. I am doing complicated projections for clients. Like I'm doing things that really require me to be in my zone of genius and using my full brain power on those days. On Wednesdays is when we have our meetings, which I do like the separation between we only have meetings on Monday and Wednesdays. Monday are internal, Wednesdays are external, because it really just like prepares you accordingly. Like frankly, if we have our internal meetings, like I have a messy bun on my head, I'm in a hoodie, like I'm not wearing makeup, I probably just finished a workout, TBH. But on Wednesdays, I know, I need to be a little bit more polished, put together. For example, right now it's a presentable day, but the worst thing is wasting good makeup on a bad day. So by batching those external calls where like you just frankly need to look a little more presentable for, it really helps. And also to me, that's the biggest hurdle, because you kind of have to like, be on for external calls. So knowing that I only have to have one like on day a week, like presentation wise, and just like how I'm presenting myself is really helpful. Also, you tend to do a lot of talking on days like that. So once I'm all talked out, then I'm excited for a Thursday to do some deep work again. And then Friday, I would say, is another deep work day, kind of wrapping up any projects that I was working on prior in the week, and then also doing any personal things. Like, frankly, if I take a weekend trip, I'm probably leaving halfway through the day on Friday. So I'll wake up extra early on Friday, do the work that I need to do, and then sign off and enjoy my weekend. I will never forget when I was in like real corporate America, which I don't consider like our company corporate America because we just like so do not embody those values. But when I was in real corporate America, I remember so clearly going on road trips, making my boyfriend drive the car. I'm working on my laptop on my hotspot all the way on a drive to Austin, Texas. And first of all, I don't know how I didn't get car sick. And second of all, just that feeling of like frantically trying to finish everything you have to finish so that you can enjoy your weekend, like that feeling sucks. So I really try to not bite off more than I can chew on Fridays, just wrap things up so I feel really accomplished for the week, maybe look ahead, plan my schedule for the week ahead, and then move on and enjoy my weekend. Okay, so the next section is a little more personal. First question, what to consider when going into business with a friend or family member? So I thought about this question and I have a few questions back to you. If this is something you're thinking about, I think these are a few questions you should ask yourself, ask that potential business partner who's your friend or family member to make sure that shit doesn't go south, frankly, because it's so important to preserve those friendships, those family relationships above all else. And you never want your business to compromise that. So a few questions you should keep in mind. First, do you know how to work together? This was one that Lane and Snom and I didn't have to ask each other because we were coworkers first and then friends second. So I would say if you aren't in that position, it's your sister or your dad and you've never worked with this person in a high stakes situation, like, do you actually know how to work together? Do you know their strengths and weaknesses? Are they complementary or are they in conflict with your own? Like, for example, Lane, Sanam, and I, all of our brains want to work on different projects naturally. Like, Sanam is really drawn towards our sales funnel and working with potential new clients. Lane is really drawn to our internal operations. I'm really drawn to our marketing and like our public persona as a business. And they're all things that a business needs in order to thrive. And so it's awesome that we're all drawn towards different areas because all of those things are progressing simultaneously. But imagine if both Lane and I were so obsessed with doing the same task and we hated the way the other one did it and we wanted to be in charge, like there would be conflict there. So luckily that is not the case with our team. And I'm so grateful for that. We have really complementary strengths, but I think that's something you should definitely consider. You know, they talk about left brain and right brain. Like, do you want two left brains together or do you want a left and right brain? You probably want a left and right. A few other questions. Do you know how they react when things go badly? Like, at the end of the day, that's going to be a reality in your business at one point or another. Do you have the type of friend or family member? Do they run from conflict or do they run towards it? Do they curl up in a ball or do they fight? Do they get angry or sad or distant? Like, there are so many reactions that people have in times of conflict. And so I think just understanding people's natural reactions and knowing that and having an awareness of that so that you can cater to that in the way that you respond to them really helps. And it really keeps you from like taking things personally. Another question would be, do you have the same level of passion and intensity? Like, if you're working with your mom who like is doing this for fun and she's retired, but you're like trying to make a living and like trying to ball out, like, are you going to be resentful if one of you ends up putting in more effort than the other? Are you going to split responsibilities evenly? Are you going to split them unequally? Are you going to be okay with that? I think just getting on the same page of like what your goals are for the business and your trajectory and your intensity along the way can only bring good things. And then the last question really is that, do you have an understanding of your long-term goals and your personal priorities? Like, is business your number one be all end all, or do you want to have balance? I personally suggest having balance, but I would say whatever route that you take, you need to be on the same page with a business partner of any sort, but particularly a friend and a family member, because you never want it to come to blows over some sort of conflict related to these things. So, quick list of questions. I hope that helped. Okay, moving on. Next question is, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of your job? For me, I would say my favorite part of my job is being able to think creatively and strategically, whether that's about our clients' marketing plans or our business planning and trajectory. I just love the feeling of ideating something from scratch and bringing it to life. it just really energizes me, like bringing something new into the world. And I do think it is one of my natural talents, like coming up with big ideas, seeing them through to the finish. Like I do get such a sense of satisfaction of like seeing that final product. And I will say, I think a lot of people make the mistake of not leaning into their natural talents, or maybe not even having an understanding of what their natural talents are. I think it's so easy to get bogged down and focus on your weakness. Like again, comparison is the thief of joy. So if you're always focused on, oh, I don't do this as good and so, I don't do this as good as that person, you can really get caught up in trying to improve your weaknesses instead of trying to hone your strengths. So I would say my biggest advice in figuring out what you want to do, what your career path should look like, I would say take an inventory of your strengths, figure out how you can nurture those, because the thing is, because it's your strength, you already have a leg up on the competition. You are uniquely qualified to be better than anybody else in something that is your strength. So imagine if you took that strength and then nurtured it. Own what you're good at, hone your craft. And when you really lean into what you are uniquely qualified to do, that's when you can really soar. On the flip side, my least favorite thing about my job, I would say that it's battling my natural tendencies for perfectionism versus just getting things done. I honestly struggle with this so much, and I just truly wish that there were unlimited hours in a day, that I could do everything that I wanted to do. I could do it exactly the way that I wanted to do it, and I could do it over as many times as I needed to get it right. That's actually one of my favorite quotes from my granny, who she loved to say, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And that's a motto that I live by this day. I truly like live and breathe that. Really, it's the antithesis to a motto that a lot of people say, which is done is better than perfect. And that one I really, really struggle to grapple with, because I do see the value in done is better than perfect. But I also see the value in, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing it right. Like either don't do it or do it to the best of your ability. So it's something that I juggle. I wish I could just like stop the clock on like the world and go into a tunnel and work on my own stuff for like a month and then press unpause and the world would come back to life and I would be like having accomplished all of these things and be so ahead of the game, but that's not realistic. So for me, I think this has been my biggest learning in my career, that you have to find a way to work smarter and not harder. And there is a way to do it right and do it quickly. So something I still struggle with, but I'd be curious to know which team you are on. Are you a doer or are you a perfectionist? Okay, next question is, what is your biggest fear in life? Yikes, we're getting deep here. Okay, so candidly, my biggest fear in life is not being successful. I think generally when I think about the life that I envision for myself, I envision a lot of abundance. And I don't necessarily mean like a number in my bank account or a title on my business card. I just envision a life where I have what I need and I am grateful for what I have. There are definitely financial implications of that feeling, but I think also cultivating that feeling of knowing that like what I have is enough is really important to me. So it's kind of twofold. Like I want to be successful career-wise, financially, to be able to afford this abundant lifestyle, but I also want to have that feeling of abundance and freedom in whatever lifestyle that I live. So I think just not being successful in capturing that feeling would be my biggest fear. Last question in this section is dating advice for your 20s. So I've been in a relationship for, oh my gosh, almost 5 years now, which is really crazy to think of that, because prior to that, I was like that perpetually single girl. Like I had one high school boyfriend, and then from there, literally did not date another person until Andrew, who's like my forever. So for dating advice, I would say in your 20s, I think it comes down to maturity. I think for me, my 20s were very focused on what other people thought of me, whether that was professionally, in a dating mindset, in just like a college social circle mindset. Like I was just really focused on what people thought about me in my 20s and less about what I thought about myself. And so the way that this applies to dating is like I would go out as a single girl living in Dallas on the weekend, and I'd go to bars with my friends from college, and you wouldn't want to not go out, because what if you went out that night and met that guy, right? Like that was always the draw. Like you're getting ready, you're putting on your makeup and you're like, wow, what if I meet a boyfriend tonight? Like that would be so cool. And then you come home and you tell your dog, you're like, I'm sorry, like still no dad for you. Like I'll try harder next time. So my 20s was a lot of that. It was like doing social things just for the sole purpose of like maybe meeting somebody, which literally never happened. So my advice for that person is if you're a partier, sure, going out and meeting people is great. But if that doesn't actually align with who you are and who you want to be, and you're just like going out to bars and doing the social scene because you want to meet somebody, the somebody that you're probably going to meet doing that isn't probably your person if that doesn't really align with who you are, who you want to be. Like if you want to meet a man of God, you're probably not going to meet him at the bar. But on the flip side, if you want to like marry a DJ and like live in Vegas, then like, yeah, go out, like whatever. So I think you need to put yourself in your 20s. It's important to put yourself in the environments where you would attract the right person. But keep in mind, this is all coming from a girl who met the love of her life on Hinge. So take that with a grain of salt. My next piece of advice for women who are dating in their 20s, and this one is from personal experience, I would say treat whoever you are talking to or dating or whatever your situationship is, treat that person how you would want the relationship to be. Stop worrying about if they think that you're weird or if you're scaring them off. Like if you are a texter, text them. If you're somebody who likes to talk on the phone, pick up the phone and call them. If you are somebody whose friends are really important to them and you've been dating this guy for 3 months and he still hasn't met your friends, text him and invite him to hang out with your friends. Like facilitate that happening. And I think care less about if this person is going to like you or if this person is going to be scared off, and care more about, does this person fit the mold of this relationship that I have in my head? Like a perfect example is when I started dating Andrew, like literally so early days, I picked up the phone and I called him because I'm just a talker. Like anytime I get in the car, I'm calling somebody. I'm calling my mom, I'm calling my dad. So when we very first started talking, I started to get the urge to just like call him and talk on the phone. And I was like, wait, that's so weird. I'm going to just like call him out of the blue. Like we've only been texting. We've gone on 2 dates. Like that's totally going to scare him off. He's going to see my name on his phone and be like, what is this girl doing? But I just challenged myself and I was like, you know what? I like to talk on the phone. I know that's a fact about myself. And frankly, if he doesn't like to talk on the phone or if he's going to think that's weird, it's not going to work out. So I picked up the phone and called him, and then it just like became not weird. So I would challenge you to just treat the person that you're talking to or dating the way that you would want to treat your ideal person in a relationship. And if they fit the role, that's great. And if they don't, not. He's either going to be into you or he's not. And it's better to find out sooner rather than later and just rip the Band-Aid off. That's my advice. Okay, so that is all the heavy questions, all the advice that I have for you. So we're going to close this episode off with just 3 final rapid fire questions. First one is, what are you reading right now? I am personally in between books right now, but I have a ton saved in my Libby app. I have switched back to audiobooks for a little bit, which you can also get on Libby for free through your library. Major life hack. But I'm wanting something that is like mindset, business, productivity, like strategy focused. The last book I read was a nutrition focused book. It was called The Food Therapist by Shira Barlow. It's a Goop Press book. I really enjoyed it. So I just finished like, a nutrition book, and now I kind of want to get into the businessy side. So some things I'm considering, I'll read you off some titles. You can let me know if they suck or if they're awesome. If they changed your world, I want to know about it. The ones I'm thinking about are Deep Work, Big Magic, Talking to Strangers, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and This is Marketing by Seth Godin. So if you have read any of these books, please let me know if they are good or if they suck so that I don't have to suffer through another snooze fest on audiobooks. So let me know. Next question is, what concealer did you use? And Lena actually asked this question. So I lately have been wearing Givenchy foundation and concealer. I'm going to butcher this name, but I think it's the Prism Libre concealer. And I really like it. It's a nice light color, really nice formula and finish. And my hack lately is, instead of putting it straight with the wand straight on my under eyes, I will use the wand to put it on the back of my hand, use my ring finger to dab that onto my eye. Because what I found is with concealer, the least amount of formula you can possibly use to get the coverage, the better, so that you don't have creasing. So use that back of the hand trick to avoid creasing, and let me know if you try it and like it. Very last question, which I feel like sums up a lot of the themes that we talked about in the episode, is, what is a friendship to deal breaker for you, which I think could apply to friendships, relationships, etc. I think for me, it is a lack of trust and open communication. Clearly, by the way that I have rambled on this podcast episode, I am an open book. So I really want somebody who is going to lay it all out on the line for me the same way that I will for them, in just being honest with what you're thinking, feeling, even if they're half-formed thoughts. Like, you don't have to be perfect just to like be honest. And so I think being just really vulnerable about where you're at, what you're struggling with, what you've half thought through, what you've decided, what you don't know, I think is so important in friendship, business, and life. So those are the questions that you guys had. You guys really put me to work today. These were some juicy ones. So if there is anything that we did not cover, something that sparked some inspiration that you want to know more about, you can head to the link in our bio, which is where you can find our anonymous question box and our voicemail. You can leave us a message through either of those mediums, or as always, you can send us a DM or an email to @MondayThroughSundayPod on Instagram, or hello@MondayThroughSundayPod.com.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Monday Through Sunday. If you're building a career, a business, or any relationships, we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us.
With that in mind, we would be so grateful if you can spare 2 minutes to rate and review this podcast. Your reviews help spread the message to more people that work doesn't have to suck.
By the way, if you're looking for your community, join us on Instagram and TikTok @MondayThroughSundayPod. We're all about connecting our like-minded listeners together. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about by sending us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you again, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.